I want to talk about the psychology behind cognitive dissonance. Now, the way I understand cognitive dissonance from my own perception, from my own awareness, is this. Cognitive dissonance is when the thoughts you have in your mind, in your brain, the beliefs you have in your belief systems, in your mind, in your brain, the ideas you have in your mind, in your brain, does not match the actions you're taking in real time, doesn't match the behavior patterns you have in real time, doesn't match the behavior habits you have in real time. Now let's break this down for minutes. In order for you to have cognitive dissonance, because cognitive, right? Cognitive, that what means things are actually happening in your mind, your brain, right? The processing and taking enough information. In order for you to have cognitive dissonance, you must first be presented with information. And when you're presented with information, you have to process that information through your neural pathways, right? Through your brain, through your mind. Now, what creates cognitive dissonance? It is fundamentally this. It is a resistance to change, right? You resist change. And why do you resist change? It's because you have a certain programming, right? I can describe cognitive dissonance in these statements. It's always been done this way. When you think of things in it's always been done this way, you actually resist change on the subconscious and conscious level because you aren't used to new information. It's unfamiliar territory. Fundamentally, it doesn't feel good. It feels uncomfortable. Therefore, you're being pulled towards what feels comfortable, what feels familiar, what feels good. Notice the word feel, it's all feelings. It's not actually logic. Because what happens when you're instead of cognitive dissonance, you aren't thinking logically. Logic goes out the window. You are not operating from an emotional standpoint of what feels good, what feels comfortable, right? That's why you resist change, because you want to feel a certain way. You want to feel comfortable, you want to feel good. And that's why the actions you have doesn't actually match the information you now have, because your brain even hasn't fully processed that information, right? It hasn't really gone and synced into your brain, because there is a resistance to change, which is clogging up and blocking your neural pathways, and you aren't able to take in new information properly and actually align your actions, right, with the reality and the truth and the facts as it is. So how do you transcend cognitive dissonance? It is through this. You have to stay curious. You have to be curious to knowing more, curious to knowledge, curious to truth, curious to facts, curious to learning. When you, instead of curiosity, you're more open. And when you're curious, right, you aren't in resistance, because you're open to new things, you're open to new information, you aren't resisting change, because you're in a state of curiosity. And this affects, right, the neural pathway, because then now you're open to taking in information, because you aren't resisting taking in new information. You aren't resisting the process of actually aligning your actions, right, to match what you know to be true and what you know to be real. So just stay curious to learning, stay curious to knowing more, stay curious to the truth, right? Curiosity fundamentally, and being open to learning and knowing more is how you transcend any level of cognitive dissonance. Because when you're curious, you aren't in a state of resistance. And that's what creates the ability to process and take in new information that actually match. And that's how you can actually make your actions, your behavioral patterns, behavioral habits be in a state of congruency with the ideas you have in your mind, the thoughts you have in your mind, right? You match those things together based on being open, being curious to what's actually real, right? You can always be instead of reality, you can always be instead of truth, because when you're open to knowing what's actually real, what's actually true, you're in fighting, right? You're in fighting this change. You're okay with being uncomfortable. You're comfortable with being uncomfortable. You're comfortable in going into new territories. You're comfortable in being open to what comes. If it's based on truth, if it's based on fact, therefore you're thinking logically, and you aren't going what feels good. You're okay if the truth doesn't feel good, because you aren't resisting change, right? You're okay with being uncomfortable because you know it's based on reality. And that's how you transcend cognitive dissonance and create change for the better.